They thought the St. Bernard was tormenting their baby. They were completely wrong. He was the only one in that house paying attention to what actually mattered. The sound of a 150-pound dog pressing his enormous face toward a screaming infant is something you never forget. Maren Volstead had read every book. She had taken the infant CPR course twice. She had a medical background, 12 years as a hospital pharmacist, and she understood, in the way that professionals understand things, that large dogs and infants require managed separation. She knew the statistics. She had underlined them. Bruno had been with them for 4 years before Signe arrived, a St. Bernard with a coat the color of autumn and a temperament so mild their neighbors called him furniture. He slept through thunderstorms. He had never once knocked over a glass of water with his tail. He was, by every measure available to Maren and her husband Torsten, the definition of a gentle giant. Signe was 9 months old when things changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in February. Signe had been crying for 40 minutes, not the ordinary fussing of hunger or a wet diaper, but a jagged, rhythmic cry that had no clear source. Maren had checked everything, fed her, changed her, walked her room to room with a hand pressed to her back. Nothing. She set Signe on the playmat in the living room and stood back watching, the way parents do when they have run out of moves. Bruno came from the hallway. He crossed the room with deliberate weight, not running, not agitated, but purposeful in a way Maren had never seen him move before. He lowered his massive head until his muzzle hovered 4 inches from Signe's face. The baby screamed louder. Bruno didn't back up. His nostrils moved in slow, deep cycles. He stayed. Maren said his name twice. He didn't acknowledge her. What she felt in that moment was not curiosity. It was the specific dread of a person who knows what large dog aggression looks like and believes she is watching it begin. She moved toward him. He shifted his body, not threateningly, just repositioning, and lowered his face again toward the baby's mouth. Torsten walked in from the kitchen. He saw the dog's head over the screaming baby and went still in the doorway. That image, Bruno's huge jaw hovering above their daughter, is the one he has never fully described to anyone without stopping partway through. "Get him out," Maren said. She wasn't asking. They put Bruno in the mudroom with his bed and a bowl of water. He scratched at the door without stopping, not frantic, methodical, like someone doing a job. Signe cried for another 20 minutes, and then, without explanation, went quiet. Maren held her for a long time in the rocking chair by the window. The baby felt warm, a little too warm. She told herself it was from the crying. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. She put Signe down for her afternoon nap. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and listened to the methodical scratch of a 150-pound dog trying to get through a door. She ignored it. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the scratching stopped. Maren realized she had been listening to it so long that the silence had weight. She set her mug down. She walked to the hallway. The mudroom door was closed. No sound from Bruno at all. Something made her go to Signe first. The baby was in the crib, on her back, eyes open, not crying, not moving. Maren bent over the rail. Signe's skin had a quality she recognized from dispensing medications late at night. Not gray, not obviously wrong, but muted, in a way that didn't belong. She touched her daughter's hand. Cold, the wrong temperature for a sleeping baby. She picked her up and felt the limpness, the particular, terrible limpness that has no innocent explanation. She called 911 while walking to the front door. She had her coat on before the dispatcher finished the first sentence. The paramedics assessed Signe in the driveway in the cold. The attending, a man named Cal Drecht, said a number out loud that made his partner move faster. 33. Sign's blood glucose was 33 milligrams per deciliter. The normal range for an infant is between 70 and 120. At 33, the brain begins to starve. At a sustained 33, seizure is not a risk. It is a timeline. At the pediatric hospital, Dr. Esme Fairbank spent 90 minutes with them. Signe had a rare form of congenital hyperinsulinism, a condition in which the pancreas produces insulin continuously, independent of glucose intake. It had been building since birth. It was invisible on standard newborn panels. The prolonged crying episode was not a mystery. It was a symptom. The body signaling a fuel crisis through the only language it had. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Dr. Fairbank told them that hypoglycemic infants exhale elevated concentrations of isoprene and acetone, volatile organic compounds produced when the body begins metabolizing fat in the absence of glucose. The chemistry is consistent and measurable. Dogs process those compounds at concentrations thousands of times below the threshold of human perception. They respond to them before any visible symptom appears. Bruno had been reading Signe's breath. Every time he pressed his nose toward her mouth, he was doing something closer to taking a reading than showing aggression. Every time Marin pulled him back, she removed the only functional alarm in the house. Every scratch at the mudroom door was not anxiety. It was an attempt to return to his post. Marin sat in the hallway of the hospital with her coat still on and thought about the 40 minutes she had spent deciding whether to ignore a door. Signe came home 3 days later with a glucose monitor on her left arm and an appointment schedule that would define the next 2 years of her life. Bruno met them at the door. He walked directly to the car seat, lowered his head, and held his muzzle an inch from Senior's face for a long moment. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Then he exhaled one long, slow breath and walked inside. Marin sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and Bruno's heavy head in her lap and didn't say anything for a long time. Torsten sat beside her. Neither of them spoke. The glucose monitor on Signe's arm blinked green in the dark from across the room, doing the work that Bruno had been doing alone from the beginning, in a language no one in that house had known how to hear. What is your dog trying to tell you right now that you haven't learned to listen to yet? The next story involves a dog who spent 3 weeks refusing to leave one room of the house, and what the family found inside the wall when they finally listened.